Welcome to the Buddha Belly Life podcast. Today I am joined by herbalistic coach Tania She's better known as Tania the Herbalist. And if you follow anything she does on social media or some of the stuff she talks about, she gets thoroughly into not just herbal medicine, you guys, but also a lot of awareness as far as what's in a lot of this stuff that we are, the products, the pharmaceuticals, the things like kind of a more back to nature level of awareness, because we've gotten so caught up in, I guess, technological advancements in quote unquote health. And we're seeing a lot of repercussions from that. So she brings so much to the table. So Tania, thank you so much for making time to be here on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So she's actually, so you're from Canada, but you are currently residing in Turkey. So give us just a little 411 on what brought you to Turkey? Because this is a recent move. You said you just got there in May, right?
Yeah.
What prompted this?
So I'm born and raised in Canada. Just with everything that's happened over the last few years, to be honest with you, it's been years, even pre-COVID, with, recognizing the corruption in the medical industry and the education system. And, being a mom, I'd always kind of questioned, like, how am I going to raise my son here? What's that going to look like? And then COVID happened, and we told ourselves at the 2-year mark, if things are not necessarily improving, let's explore our options. Let's take a trip and let's explore our options. And so it took a long time of exploring our options in terms of what's the education system like, how's the lifestyle, the quality of life, everything like that. And so we made the decision to try out Turkey because it's a European country, but not part of the European Union. And it's very much self-sustainable. It's where we are in Antalya. It's summer almost all year round. So it's easy to live self-sustainably. Wow. There's fruit trees everywhere. Farmers market is like the size of a football stadium. And so it's very different than what we're accustomed to, obviously an adjustment, but in terms of the simple things that we really wanted in food and education and all that stuff, it seemed like the best decision for us at that time. Who knows where we're going to end up if we end up somewhere else after this, but at least for now, this is where we're staying.
That's amazing. And you're close enough, right, to like Greece and
everything is like within an hour flight and super cheap.
I've never been to that area. And honestly, when COVID happened and it made it really hard to like travel and stuff. I mean, and we have a lot of kids. So my husband and I have 6 kids. We're a blended family.
Awesome.
So we have 6 kids and we share custody and so we have a lot more restraints on our travel, but it is forever on my bucket list. So when you talk about being over there, the Mediterranean lifestyle and even like food availability and just everything, it's just, and like you said, the weather, like, oh my gosh, I'm in North Idaho right now. So I'm really close to the Canadian border in Idaho, probably maybe 2 hours max. And we've barely gotten summer yet. Like we just now are starting to hit the 80s and no one can handle it because we've had like the worst weather ever. We've had no summer and all of our bodies are not acclimated.
Well, we're adjusting to this. Like it's hot, right? Summertime right now and it gets hot. And our systems are not used to this kind of heat where it's like 37, 38, 39 outside. And all you could really do is either go to the mall, stay inside or go to the beach. So most of the time we're either at the beach or at the mall. So.
Oh, so tell me a little bit. Obviously your passion is very clear. How did you get here? We all kind of have a story. So I haven't even chatted with you about what really got you here. But I know that it probably, resonates with something. So give us a little insight on how you really started studying and got into herbal medicine and health and this stuff.
So I got into herbal medicine when it came to the pharma industry nearly killing my mother. She was literally left on her deathbed. She was on a ton of narcotics. She's got a rare disease called like neurofibromatosis. So she's got like painful tumors throughout her body. And she was on like heavy narcotics. And then of course those narcotics had side effects. And so they gave her more pills to help the side effects of those. And eventually got to the point where she was just not really coherent anymore. I couldn't have a conversation with her. And I had a breakdown, and I was grieving my mom while she was physically still alive, because my mom being my matriarch, like I get my determination, my intelligence, I get that from her. So to see that figure,
we embody a lot of our mother.
exactly. Yeah. So to see that figure of your life being physically there, but everything else is gone, it was hard. And so I literally had a breakdown, a total meltdown, and I needed to take time off work and try and figure myself out. I had extreme anxiety, like chronic anxiety, puking every single day anxiety, insomnia. I got endometriosis, I got IBS. Like stress will do that to your body, right?
Yes.
And so I took a step back and I sat by nature, and I just kind of told myself, like, I need to ground myself. I need to meditate. I need to try and figure my stuff out. And after about a week of doing that every single day, my goal was to say every single day, I just want to sit by nature. I need to detach myself from everything. I guess being in nature for that long, maybe being around plants and all of that, just, I had finally that aha moment. It's like I had quieted my mind just long enough after about 7 days that the inner voice in me told me, like, there's another way. There must be plants. And so I was just like, So I bought my first book, National Geographic book on medicinal herbs. Is a little bit like a lot of content, but I took a pen and a paper and I just started writing. And then from there, I was just like, oh my God, there's so much healing power in plants. And so my mom became my guinea pig, and she became my guinea pig. And it also gave her the mindset to know that she can get off of these pills. And she got off her narcotics. The doctors are like, there's no way. She got off of her narcotics. She got off of her pills. And I was able to have a conversation with my mom again. She started to laugh again. She started to like live again. And I just ran with it ever since. And I realized that there's a lot of, like, they leave you to essentially die, but nature is what brought her back to life.
Oh my goodness. So is your mom still alive now?
She's with us in Turkey.
Wow. And she's pretty rehabilitated.
Yeah. I mean, she's still, the thing is, and that's why I love teaching about holistic health, is because she's still very unhealed in a lot of things. So she's not healed. She still has trauma and things to deal with. And until she can overcome that, will she actually be holistically healed? But she goes out, she talks, she laughs. She's not
functional, like she wasn't
dependent on the pills the same way. She's not dependent on narcotics. She doesn't take any narcotics and stuff. That was the biggest milestone for her.
Because how can you even try to take anything in your own hands when you're just drugged enough to, like, I call it prescription life support.
It is essentially, right? Like, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. That's an amazing story. And kudos to you for just sitting with that and doing all that work in a state of trauma and distress. And kudos to your mom for accepting some of that. I know, like, I train a lot of health coaches, and a lot of them are always kind of vicariously trying to heal those closest to them through other people, because we often can't reach those closest to us. It's like, it's just the thing, right?
And even till now, there's a kind of a barrier. There'll always be, there's only, but the point is that gave her the light to recognize this is not the end for me. It's not the end for me. And I think that was the biggest thing. And you're right. Because I guess instinctively, we heal ourselves when we heal others. And so by doing that, and I guess finding this passion that I had for herbal medicine, I eventually overcame my anxiety. I eventually overcame my endometriosis. I eventually overcame insomnia. And all of that just kind of happened because I was obviously exploring with myself with plant medicine and everything as well. And then you start seeing, okay, wait, can actually be done naturally. I did it myself. I've seen it myself. I've helped thousands of people do it themselves too. And so it just, from there, you just, that ripple effect kind of takes place.
So, I mean, and tell me if you can, answer this. Okay. But how was your lifestyle prior to, if you don't mind me asking, like, how was your lifestyle prior to kind of this epiphany? Was it, because a lot of us, it's like, maybe we live pretty healthy within a certain dimension, right? But holistic health is about the full spectrum. And that's one of the things that's hardest for us to like walk our talk sometimes. And some people are just like, they totally like, they followed the standard American diet, or maybe for you, the standard Canadian diet, and they just really didn't. And then they kind of had an epiphany and changed everything. Like, where were you when you shifted this experience? Like, how kind of was your lifestyle at the time? Because you said you're struggling with.
Right. I would say that I didn't watch what I eat. I didn't recognize the toxic chemicals in my home. I would have Bed Bath and Beyond candles lit every single night right next to me, detergent, everything. I was engulfed in toxins. I had coffees every single day. I was a smoker at the time as well.
Wow.
So like when I say I was really unhealthy, now looking back, it's like, no wonder why I had all these health issues, and eventually the process of elimination changes everything.
But even like what you're talking about, even though your lifestyle was so unhealthy, and I put huge emphasis on toxins, on our diet and stuff like that. But what I see a lot with people, and I'm sure that you can kind of relate to this personally, is that, maybe their body's not super resilient. They haven't cared well for it. It's not in a great state of health. But a moment of trauma is when it really just implodes,
100%.
when all this stuff 100%. Comes out. And so like I know we've tried really hard, and I like that you touched on that, because that's something that we've touched on more with coaches now, and we're putting more and more emphasis as the days go on, is not to de-emphasize what we're consuming, both in our food and in our products and in our air and in our water and all that, but also just to really understand that just as strong is our unhealed trauma, consistent stress, et cetera, et cetera. Like if someone has trauma wounds that they haven't dealt with, let's say from childhood and stuff, and then, throughout life, like they get re-triggered over and over again. And that's what people don't understand, is that they relive this trauma and they keep it in their life and in their body on such a consistent basis. And so we tend to see a lot of disease come out, maybe predispositions, thyroid, like especially autoimmunity. But when we go through things like that, so it's really interesting that when you were going through all this with your mother, that even though you'd probably had this lifestyle that wasn't ideal for a long time, that it really just exploded at this time that you were going through such immense emotional distress.
Right. In my Healers Awakening webinar, I have a free webinar that talks about like how your mind, body, heart, and soul are connected when it comes to healing. And it ties into that because there's one particular part where I was saying, you can be as healthy as you want. You can eat organic. You can exercise. You can do everything you need to do. But if you have like something as simple as stress, or you haven't learned to turn the page, or you have an unhealed trauma, at the end of the day, you're still going to have the root cause of those issues and that health issues. Because a lot of people are like, I'm super healthy and I'm this and that. I'm like, okay, but
yes,
how do you manage stress? What about past trauma? Have you forgiven? Did you learn how to forgive? Do you know how to turn the page? Like these things are so important. And it's true because I help countless people overcome anxiety naturally. And a lot of times, yes, I'm telling them, okay, this is stuff that you could take to help your nervous system, but we still got to get to the root problem. You can't just sit here and mask the symptoms. Let's talk about what's triggering this anxiety so that you don't actually have to be afraid of it anymore. But it's 100% a lot of unhealed stuff that surfaces itself.
And I think that there's so much stigma around, let's say, like holistic health. For a lot of the times that people think like holistic health, they just think holistic medicine. They just mean herbs and supplements instead of pharmaceuticals, which like that's just such a surfacey component of it. And frankly, I've seen people, and I'm sure you have too. I love that you incorporate all that, because I've seen people in the holistic health arena that kind of operated just like the pharmaceutical industry, right? Like they're like,
I can't tell you
have this.
I can't tell you holistic health coaches that were like, for example, just pushing vaccines and all of that. And I'm just there like, what? So do you trust the body or do you not trust the body? Because you lose credibility by saying, hey, by the way, I'm holistic healing, but I trust in the pharmaceutical to help you with A, B, C, D. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense because then you don't trust the body.
Totally. And I think that like most people, I mean, we have like our extreme, right? Like if I need to go under anesthesia because I get in a car accident, right? Like acute care and trauma, like it's, they have this stigma that if you are really into really holistic health, that you're anti everything that we've done, when really, no, it's about the responsible use. I think that, it being a profit industry is a big mess. If pharmaceuticals and stuff existed for extreme scenarios only, like I know some of my like the most natural healthiest people I know, who like their child had some kind of really rare funky thing. And, they had to take an antibiotic at one point or something. But I know that that was a last resort. We are totally only bringing this in because of the severity of the incident. And we don't think that there's another option, et cetera, right? Like, it's totally responsible. Whereas
I think that's
the profit doesn't allow them to do that. We push it, and the average doctor, 40% of their education is in pharmacology. So basically, they're not being taught about. Yeah, they're not being taught about the body on a functional level. They're being taught about symptoms and how to use a pharmaceutical to make a symptom go away. That's apparently.
Right. Yeah. And I like that you touched on the antibiotics, because that's exactly it. The more you take it, the more resistant you are to antibiotics, so that if you ever actually need it for a life-threatening situation, there's a chance that the antibiotics will not even work the way that they're intended to work. So now you see parents all the time, my child has an ear infection, my child has strep throat, my child has this, my child has that, and they're like, antibiotics. And you're like, no, you're doing the body such a disadvantage, because God forbid your child gets something like meningitis or who knows what, if they actually need antibiotics, well, now they're going to be more resistant to it. And it's our medical industry, because that's what they give. And they as long as they instill that fear into a parent, the parent will be like, okay, just as long as my child is
an authority.
100%.
Authority, like you are neglecting your child if you are questioning anything we're doing. And like, no, guess what? It is. And why do you think even amongst doctors and professionals, right? You have like second or third opinions. Like, there's reasons people get different opinions, and there's a reason they call it a practice, because we need to be educated. And anybody who deserves, a level of, anybody with integrity should encourage, especially a parent and an individual, when it comes to their body and their health, they should encourage their self-education and their knowledge of, making choices for themselves, and not making choices because they're just told to do something blindly and they don't think about it.
One of the biggest life-changing books my first book that I read when I became a mom was called How to Raise a Healthy Child in Spite of Your Doctor. And it was written by a pediatrician of like 30 years who had now been retired. This book was written in 1984. And he talks everything from nutrition to illnesses to vaccines to all of them, and like how to deal with it naturally, or how not dangerous it is, but the medical system will make you think otherwise. But what's interesting is, that's why I always say kind of follow the money and follow history, is because in 1984, when he was writing this book, he was saying doctors are closing their practices literally because of the amount of malpractice lawsuits that they were having, because of things that they were suggesting to people based on what they're told to recommend, because the education system is telling them, hey, this is for medical practice, this is what I got to do. Now they're being sued and they're shutting down their practices because they can't afford it. Well, 1986, that all changed. You can now no longer sue your doctor, oddly enough. And then they just ran with it. So this is how they were able to protect themselves, but never protected the patients. So they were shutting down businesses in 1984 and 1985 because of the stuff that they were recommending, and lawsuits coming in. And then in 1986, there's no more lawsuits allowed. You couldn't sue them anymore, no longer the manufacturers as well. So guess who's getting harmed? Your child, you as a person.
And this is what we saw with vaccines. And again, like, whatever a person's choice is, like, I'm always an advocate of self-education, of seeking information, which has been rather manipulated lately. Like, we used to be able to come up with, there was a lot of case studies, there was a lot of testimonials and stories and things. And now, since 2020, a lot of that is being banned, which is really hindering an individual's ability to take in non-subjective information in order to make decisions for themselves and their children, which is unfortunate. But that's what we have to do. And so then what happened was, like you're saying, like I know the vaccine manufacturers, like, they have almost no liability now.
None.
So if they injure or anything comes back, in fact, they show that most injuries or cases that are, let's say symptoms that are curious, that show up in children and individuals within a very, 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 very close proximity to them receiving vaccines, these symptoms that show up should be recorded as data in order to fully investigate. And these things are not happening. They're not being recorded as data. They are being put off. And we have a lot of unexplained repercussion
And it's never been
That's
tested for
ironically
long-term. So
following.
chronic illnesses,
Absolutely.
autoimmune diseases, the whole 9 yards.
Spectrum
Yeah,
issues.
that's never
Yeah.
been checked.
Yep. Yep. One of my good friends, she is a chiropractor, but she practices a really unique type of chiropractic. Like she has something called the Focus Academy. She teaches it now all over the world. And it's really brain-based chiropractic. And she works a lot with the neurological system and stuff like that. And it's amazing because in her therapy, she combines chiropractic care, which is tending to the nervous system and stuff like that, with gut health.
Mm-hmm.
Hey. And with like certain therapies to help rewire the brain. And when she's giving her education on how, when these because there's so many kids now on the spectrum of some sort. I mean, it's just, yes, we're diagnosing it better, but it's just, it's increasing rapidly. And so she's talking about some things that what she talks about is that stress and growth cannot exist at the same time. And her class was so just empowering and educational for me. Stress and growth cannot exist at the same time. And she talks about the extreme amount of growth that happens when a child is going through their developmental phases, and different stressors. So whether it be chemical, whether it be environmental, whether it be abuse or trauma, birth trauma, etc., that when those stressors or traumas are happening when the brain's supposed to be developing, then a child's brain doesn't wire optimally the way that it would, so that and that's where we're seeing some of these spectrum issues. And she references the multiple things that are linked to these stressors. And that is also pharmaceutical usage is a strong one. Antibiotics, an overabundance of vaccines at an early age in life, at a key developmental phase of the infant, to where we have more and more of them now, and all these things, and how they're putting hitches in the developmental process of the brain. And it's so fascinating to me. And yet, like, we're not allowed to talk about that. We're not even allowed to suggest that someone look into something like that. Why? If that's my baby, if that's my body, it is my right to know. And a lot of people are afraid to do interviews like this because the repercussions could be so big.
Right. And that's the thing is anyone like a naturopathic doctor, even they all carry licenses, and that's how they were able, I know I've talked about it a number of times, but when you look at how the medical system was taken over in the early 1900s by Rockefeller, they made it so that they completely monopolized the healthcare system by taking over the education system. And then you have to hold a license in order to be able to practice medicine. So what they did is they essentially took over the healthcare industry so that you can only teach allopathic medicine. Herbalism, homeopathy, natural healing was completely eradicated from the medical system. And you were actually even criminalized and penalized if you were suggesting any of it. And now doctors are not allowed to suggest it, or they'll get their license revoked. And obviously you can't practice medicine without a license. And if you do, you can actually be charged and jailed for it. So they've thought this out really well, hence why doctors aren't speaking out. And if they are, they're risking losing their license and shutting down their practice. So that's how they've been able to take over the medical system completely. And now everyone trusts the expert that was taught based on the education system that's only allowed to teach them what they want to know. And they're like, oh, but you're not an expert. You didn't study for 8 years. Study what for 8 years? Pills? For
40% pharmacology.
More. It's more than that, 100%.
Yeah.
That's all they know. Even when you go to a doctor's clinic right now, they're either opening up a massive book of symptoms and looking for the, corresponding pill, or they're Googling something. It's unbelievable. Yeah. They actually open up.
I've had doctors do that in front of me.
It's crazy.
Like, I've had them pull out a book, and
I have had a debate with, I kid you not, 4 solid doctors about vaccines, and every single one of them were shut down by the end of it. Literally couldn't even say anything because they're not taught that in medical school. I think 8 hours max is taught on vaccines. That's it. You're talking about years of research and knowing anything and everything that you can find out about it. You can't ignore that, So they just know what they're taught, and then people are blindly following them because they've got a white coat and they think they must know what they're talking about. But all they know is what they're taught. That's what they're talking about, not their own understanding of the body and healing and what that actually means.
Mm-hmm. And it's compartmentalized. Like, we have specialists, we have an ear, nose, and throat. We have a GI. We have the,
nothing is connected. You're not
endocrinologist.
recognizing that it's all interconnected. And the worst part of the medical system is, I can't figure it out. Let's remove it.
Yes. And what I always say to the coaches, I'm always like, your body is not full of trap doors, you guys, like locked doors. Right. It does not stop. Your ear, nose, and throat is not solo in existence. Like everything is connected to everything. So we need to be able to see all of it. And, and with that said, like, I mean, obviously we have a lot of emotions around the traditional medical system, and I've had some terrible experiences with doctors and stuff. But with that said, I've also met a lot of really great ones too. And I understand that they were kind of a lot of them were set up for failure. There's a lot of really good individuals that really want good things. And some of them even like seeks additional education, especially outside of the US. Like we actually have trained, MDs and things like that in other countries because they're open to it. They want the education. They want to know about gut health and the gut body connection. And in the States, you're not going to find that so much. But it is out there, but there's so many, they're at such a risk of persecution, of liability, lawsuit, malpractice, all this stuff by even going there. And a lot of them are set up for failure where they don't even get more than 5 minutes with a person. Right. And so like we understand.
It all comes down to money at the end of the day.
Yep. And so it's like, we get a lot of that stuff. I mean, the idea would be someday for that bridge to, that gap to bridge itself amongst holistic practitioners and those who have the resources to pharmacology if need be, but we'd see a big decrease in property.
I can tell you, I see the big difference being here in Turkey right now, where they've got a pharmacy at every corner as if it's a convenience store, but they're not suggesting pills right away. One of them was like, why don't you try quercetin for this and that? And I was like, did she just suggest quercetin instead of this? And it was actually nice to see that they're recommending like natural stuff at the same time. So they're not opposed to it. And I'm like, hey, my son's got a chronic cough right now since we got here. I don't know if it's allergies or whatever. And then I was like, I need a nebulizer. And she's like, okay, perfect. I'm like, no medication though. I just need this saline. She's like, okay, perfect. Let's do saline. Like, super open. Like it was different. And I find that a lot more in the Eastern world than you would find it in the Western world. The Western world is very hard to find that very much, where the Eastern world is still a little bit more connected to more natural forms of healing. But of course the pharma has worked their way in really everywhere.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And even just the price points, it's like, oh yeah, I mean, it's grotesque. Some of these things that people are dependent on now because they've been made dependent. So there's no way they could just stop them overnight. And the cost is just financially catastrophic, and it never had to be. I mean, it's clearly a profit industry. And that's where it's like, how do we ever trust something that's an extreme profit industry? And I think that's where like a lot of, coaches and stuff are really disparaged, is because, they don't have the education, right? But the thing is that kind of like all the chiropractors I know, well, most of them, those naturopaths, the people in holistic health, they are constantly seeking ongoing education, right, case studies, testimonials. Their goal is to not keep seeing you. And yet, so they have to keep seeking this information. Whereas like, in the traditional medical community, their ongoing education
you don't feel like you succeeded,
is furthered by pharmaceuticals.
If they keep like when I'm helping someone, they have to keep seeing me, then I feel like I'm failing, which is against it. I'm like, I hope I never have to see you again. And I hope I hear a success story. Thank you. Bye. I don't depend on you being dependent on me.
No, I depend on the referrals that your success and your health process is going to send my way. And imagine what that would be, right? But instead, we have this extreme dependency on this stuff. It's super unfortunate. And, and we've pulled so far away. So like you were talking about, like how some of the history of medicine, which is really interesting. I got really passionate and really knowledgeable about that when I was going to have my first child. I was in my 20s. And I was really researching birth and stuff. And again, I never judge anyone's choices for themselves, their journey, their process, whatever. But I knew I wanted to have natural birth ever since I was little. I think because my mom did it. So drug-free birth. And then I had moved and I talked to some people and I was going to do the birthing center, but then it was like my house was actually closer to the hospital in the case of an extreme emergency than the birthing center was. So that's how I kind of got into like, what about home birth? And when I was researching home birth and really the birth process, and I'm a freak for like, that's the thing. If you're into natural wellness and holistic health, you're probably more of a hypochondriac-ish or would be perceived as one than the average person, because you hear your body so much, you listen to it so much, you research everything it's telling you if it sounds out of whack. We're not just the people that ignore stuff and let it get worse. And so it was like, and, really investigating and learning about how birth went into the hands of, originally they took it out of the hands of these midwives, these women who were so skilled in the process. What they were missing is, yes, they didn't always have the cleanest conditions. They didn't know that some simple sanitary measures would help with infection and deaths of moms and babies. Right? It was very simple. But they ran into that in the hospitals too. And so it was taken out of the hands of these midwives, and they were like the low income, they were the low class option now. And all the high class went to the doctors for their births. And initially, they were drugging these women with such hardcore narcotics. They were creating brain damage in these women and these babies. And we kind of just don't talk about any of this. It's like, if you want to do something, if you want to learn something, you go in there and you start researching the process of birth, transitioning from midwives to the medical community and what that actually looked like. It is wretched. It is scary. It is very, these women were completely knocked out. They didn't even experience this amazing, birth of their child. Just so many things came from it. And we move on like it never happened. And we still keep expecting people to not question anything. Like everyone's like, oh, they just got all that out of their system back then. They just screwed up stuff back then. But now everything's perfect, right? Now all the practices are, totally fine. That's why we have recalls on pharmaceuticals every other month, right? Because all the practices are totally fine and we don't need to worry about it. Someone else can.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing is the research portion is so important. And I tend to use the example of think about any mom with a car seat or a crib. You're looking at every review, you're comparing all the models, you're doing your research and everything before you invest in it. Why not do the same thing with anything that your child is ingesting, digesting, putting into the body and everything? You should be the same kind of due diligence.
Absolutely. And especially in our own bodies. And imagine how great it could be if the people we were working with, it was a team. We remembered that we are the client. We are the client, not a patient. I hate the word patient because unless I am, completely incapacitated and I've been in a car accident and I'm half brain dead, then I'm your patient. You've got pretty much full control over what you got to do for me. Right. But other than that, I am a client. I pay you. I want to be a team with you, right? I want you to respect me and vice versa. And we can figure out what I want to choose, right? Not what you want to choose for me or for my children. Right. And it's great. Yeah. To be able to do that. And we've ran into that a lot with my kids, being in a split home, when you have a couple different parents that don't all see eye to eye on things, right. It's really hard. And I remember one experience, my oldest son still to this day has only ever been on one antibiotic in his whole life. He just turned 11 and it was at this time and and my ex-husband and I were split and he had an eye infection in both eyes. And because it was in both eyes, I was like, it's probably viral. We all had a bug. And so, viral, if you guys aren't, there's viral and then there's bacterial. Bacterial is where there's a bacteria actually doing it. Viral is where it's a virus and there's no antibiotic that could do anything for a virus. And so I was like, okay, his eyes, but his dad was like, we need to get him in. After day 3, his eyes weren't better. We need to get him in. And sometimes when you're in a co-parenting deal, especially when you're split, you got to make compromises. So we got him in, and this lady, originally I'd really kind of trusted her. And this doctor, apparently she was kind of more respectful of individual wishes and interactions and things. And so we go there and she looks at him and she goes, he's got a double ear infection. And I was like, no, because he hadn't said a thing about his ears, not complained about any pain, nothing. And so she was basically acting like I was so negligent. And frankly, she was mad that I hadn't been taking him in for his regular stuff, right? All the stuff, all the vaccines, all the things. I didn't take him to the doctor because I put a lot of money. I took him to a chiropractor regularly. I did, all these kinds of things. I found him very clean. He didn't have bad symptoms of anything, and so that's how I'd chosen to do it. And she was kind of retaliating at me for not doing that. So she was really condescending and she wanted me to, basically, she's like, he has a double ear infection. And I looked at her, I said, well, what kind is it? Right? Why am I going to ask what kind it is? Because if it's a viral ear infection, it's going to clear up on its own. And there's no pills that are going to do anything good for it. The antibiotics are just going to compromise the immune system. And I said, well, what kind is it? And she looks at me and she goes, the kind in your ear. And I was like, and I'm like so much younger at this point in time. It was prior to really getting into gut health. I felt totally bullied because my ex-husband was there. And I was so frazzled, and I was just like, are you kidding me? So we leave with this stupid prescription for this, antibiotic, and he took it, and then I tried to mitigate afterward. But that to this day is the only antibiotic he's ever been on. And I just remember like how I felt when she talked down to me like that. And just because I was trying to interact about it. Like, hey, can we discuss if this is really necessary? And I was just shot down by somebody I was supposed to be able to trust. And that and a multitude of other experiences I've had really messed with my trust in how to interact with the system the way that it is.
Yeah. Yeah, even with my son, when we got here, there was, I think he got some kind of he got like pink eye, pretty much in both eyes were like pussing. And I didn't know what it was. And obviously my family typically, because they don't always think the same way that I do. And they're like, he needs antibiotics. He's got pink eye. It's going to get worse. This is going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And all I did, I kid you not, is literally chamomile poultices, compresses on his eyes. Within 2 days, it was gone.
Yeah. Right. And so
I was like, he doesn't need antibiotics. His body will fight it off. He's got a fever. Perfect. So his immune system is kicking in, and you know what I mean? It's doing what it needs to do. And I'm giving him the support at the same time. And that's all we can do.
And it's not about ignoring. This is where people get confused, where they think that it's being like negligent or neglectful. Like you're ignoring it. Like, no, actually it's the opposite. Like, you better believe I'm monitoring my child's temperature multiple times a day, because I know how long a fever should be lasting. I know that after a day or two, it should start to go down. I know that a fever is a sign that their immune system is doing what it's supposed to do. But I know that if it were to keep getting higher and not go down after those days, that maybe there's a type of infection and I need to look further, right? Like I'm equipped with that knowledge so that it won't get past me.
Right.
And it's very different than just turning a blind eye and,
I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions out of everything, out of pills, out of anything. The worst thing that the medical industry has taught new parents, especially, bring down the fever, because they've instilled that fear, like they're going to have a seizure, they can have brain damage, this and that can happen. And yes, febrile seizures are not totally uncommon, but they're not dangerous, as scary as they seem. They don't cause long-term damage, nothing like that. And they typically only happen when the temperature rises at such a high rate quickly. But every time they're suppressing the fever, you're stopping the body from doing what it needs to do. And there's certain antigens in the body that don't actually even get activated until the body is at that heat, at that temperature. And so that's one of the worst things that we could ever do. And it's like, here, give Tylenol, give Advil, bring it down. As soon as there's the onset of a fever, they think that they're sick. And it's like, no, this is the immune system doing what it needs to do. And every time you suppress it, they're going to get sick again until their body can eventually build the antibody, if you let them. And if not, then, there's other sicknesses, God forbid, down the road that will just start manifesting themselves.
Yeah. Yep. And I feel like we see this a lot with like chronic ear infections and things like that, because kids are given these antibiotics for what are often viral infections,
but destroying their gut and their good bacteria,
just ruining the immune system. So what happens when they get a virus similar to that again and again? They just keep getting reoccurrent ear infections, reoccurrent sinus infections, and all these things. And it's like, okay, like where are we at here, guys? Like, we're the people that are supposed to be, helping us with this and knowing that. I mean, it feels kind of basic. Honestly, it feels basic, and not to be condescending. It just goes to show that we've been too afraid to question. Kind of like cough medicine. Like I like to tell people, I'm like, cough suppressants, do you know how they work? Most people don't know how they work. They work by targeting a part of the brain that tells the body it needs to cough. That's how they work. So when you're coughing because your body wants to get a gunk out of it so it doesn't turn into infection. Right. It's for you, right? The body is for you. You're going to cough up this junk. So when we're going, oh, we're going to medicate that, we're going to give you this cough suppressant, we're just going to turn off your coughing ability and that need to do. Now we're setting you up for pneumonia.
Get that out. And the heavier that cough is, the wetter that cough is, perfect. You're breaking it up. It's coming out.
Yes.
But it's crazy. Yes. They're trying to just suppress it and like mask it. I know.
And then they have pneumonia and things like that. And now we're like, oh no, now they have this. And now this is why we need more people, because this can happen to any of us. And we're not understanding the processes that we're actually doing and what it's actually doing to our body, to our kid's body, etc. So when you, so when you talk about things, like vitamins and minerals and toxins, I mean, you shared some really cool information, when it comes to that. And a lot of people are like nutrient deficient. I think you were talking about something a bit ago. I was reading where you were talking about like magnesium,
right,
or something.
Right.
And that's so fascinating to me, because so many of us are just so magnesium deficient. But what are some of the things that you advocate the most, aside from just like, obviously, herbal subs, for, instead
I
of
always gravitate towards plants the most, because as soon as you tell someone, hey, you need some of these supplements, a lot of people don't recognize that the mainstream supplements, a lot of the major brands are owned by the very same pharmaceutical companies, right? And they're just there to mask it. So I always go to plants first, because plants, like for example, nettles does have so many vitamins and minerals and everything from, potassium and manganese and vitamin A and K and dandelion. Like they're packed in vitamins. And if you can get those into your body in the most natural form, your body's going to absorb it much, much better. But yeah, I also talked about magnesium, because a lot of people don't recognize that in order to absorb magnesium properly, you need vitamin D. And in order to absorb vitamin D properly, you need magnesium, or you can start to get calcium buildup in pockets in the body. But at the same time, I always say topical magnesium is best, because a lot of the magnesium forms that you get, are not absorbed properly. Therefore, you're magnesium deficient. And if you're actually taking too much vitamin D with not enough magnesium, it can actually enhance your magnesium deficiency. So it's actually working as a disadvantage. There's a lot of people that are like, hey, I just take my vitamin D. And it's like, okay, but could be depleting other things as well. And especially, what form of vitamin D are you taking? Are you getting out in the sun? Are you, there's a lot of things that does play a role in everything. So my major thing is topical magnesium, vitamin D in liquid form. And then, I try to really I don't take very many supplements. The only supplements I typically take are CMOS, and those are powdered capsules, right? So it's in powder form. And everything else, I try to get it from my herbs and plants and my food, which that's why I'm also happy to be here, because I'm like, oh my God, I can have fruits and vegetables in abundance and get vitamins and stuff you need. Whereas obviously being in Canada, it's not as easy to find organic, but I would still try to get frozen, if that meant frozen over fresh. And just mostly getting it from food and stuff. But there's a lot of people that overly supplement, which is working as a disadvantage, especially if it's not in its purest form and who the company is, because then I don't want to say you may as well be popping pills, but essentially you're doing nothing to your body except for still overloading your liver.
Well, and that's exactly true. And I remember my mom teaching me a long time ago, because she has her master's in nutrition education. And I remember when she was first getting into that, and she was talking about like, we've never, and it's true, we've never been able to replicate nature when it comes to nutrients. And so, yeah, we might isolate a nutrient like, hey, okay, scurvy. So let's isolate some, vitamin C so that we're not having this horrible thing. That's a repercussion of refining our flour, but we're not, what we miss is that when we're getting those things in nature, they're coming with supportive nutrients that absolutely affect the processing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So vitamins and minerals, it's amazing. Just like how the body's so intricate, like so are the foods. It's really weird. I think not weird, but just interesting when you step back and you look at nature and the intricacies of nature and an environment. I'm always just so fascinated, because I'm like we are an environment ourselves too. When you study bacteria, gut bacteria, skin bacteria, the microbiome across the whole body, right? It's like this colony of creatures and all these functions, and like how we process nutrition from foods, and these foods, what nutrition is in foods is so complex. It's way more complex than we ever think. And no wonder when we're isolating nutrients and taking them in a vitamin form by themselves without all the other stuff that, and we don't even know exactly how everything works. Like we might know, like you said, magnesium and vitamin D, like, they're supportive and things like that, but we don't even know the half of how nature designed it. So when we're living off a diet that's mainly processed food, so not only is it void of nutrition, but then we're fortifying it with just a little bit of this, really crappy sourced, this and this and this. And no wonder the ecosystem of our body is deteriorating, just like the ecosystem of our food.
Right.
That we're not
What
taking.
I love about plants, especially, is I say, like, it's not very hard to learn about them. And it's like every region, this is what's so beautiful about Mother Nature, is wherever you are, whatever plant is growing in abundance there is plants that you should be consuming. Oh, is there dandelions everywhere? Perfect. Consume dandelions because they're like so high in vitamin K, A, D, like so many nutrients in dandelion. You can eat any and every part of it. Obviously just make sure that's not close to the road or where there's, dog feces or stuff like that sprayed. But same thing with like burdock root and milk thistle. Like where I used to live is like they were abundantly everywhere. And it's like, what are those for? Well, those are number one for your liver. Okay, so it's telling you that probably most people around here need a liver and a kidney cleanse. And then you see nettles growing abundantly. Well, nettles is high in vitamins and nutrients. So it's growing around you. All you have to do is listen, look for it and say, okay, well, this is growing a lot around me. So maybe I should start consuming it. Which is why when I came up with like my medicinal herb guide and I put the pictures and everything, it's like, here, learn about the plant, go out and find it. And you can actually harvest it yourself and start to consume it yourself. It's super easy, but empower yourself with that, because same thing I'm doing it now is I'm walking around and I'm kind of like, what plants am I noticing growing abundantly here? And I need to learn about that because this is where I am right now. This is probably something that needs to be consumed for sure.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And what's interesting too, I think, just to add to that is like, when we teach gut health, obviously, like diversity in the microbiome is what is connected to health. Right. It's not always just like the quantity of certain bacteria that you have. It's the diversity. More diversity is a more diverse ecosystem. You're going to get more health benefits, just like a more diverse forest is going to be a healthier forest. But that the guts of people throughout different regions are different in the bacteria they have based on what grows and exists near them. And they become one with that environment and the microbes that they get from that environment. So there's a lot about this stuff that's growing around us locally. Like when they say like eat regionally and seasonally.
100%, exactly.
Yeah. I think it's one of the best things that we can do for our microbiome, for our health, for everything, because our bodies and our families and we've adapted to that region, and we're best to eat from it instead of, shipping in Franken tomatoes that have no nutrition from, 5 states away and putting
100%. Yeah, it's true. Cause in certain countries, like here, for example, everything's by the season. Like strawberry season is just ending here. So you won't be finding strawberries anymore. And I used to do that back in Canada too. When it wasn't strawberry season, you don't find me buying it unless it's frozen. I'm not buying strawberries in the grocery store, so it should be in season 100%. That's what your body needs. Right now, they've just brought in figs, and I have never had fresher, more vibrant figs in my life. It's crazy, but it's awesome. It's just listen to nature, listen to your body. You're so connected with it, and then you'll get what you need out of it. It's not a complicated diet. We need a more simple diet to thrive, actually. But people are so looking towards, so much flavor and so much diversity that they're overloading their bodies with just, food in all the wrong ways. And I'm not saying that I don't sit here and eat, some unhealthy foods and stuff like that. Of course I do. But the point is it's in moderation. And most of the time I don't, so that when I do eat like that, it's not putting havoc on my system.
Yeah, you're resilient.
Right.
Your body's more resilient too. And you know what you're doing.
Right.
You know the choice. That's like me. Like if I, had a glass of wine or I ate a cookie or I did something right, like I know what that's going to do to my body. I know how my body's going to feel about it. So I'm very conscious of that experience. So how do you prepare a lot of your food? So you do you forage locally? Like how do you get a lot of this stuff and how are you consuming
Not
it?
now as much anymore, but like I said, most of it we go to it's almost like a farmer's market that's there every week. Yeah. There's actually twice a week, and anything and everything that you could buy there for fruits and vegetables are there, and like fresh like meat and fish and like even raw milk is easy to get here, which is another big thing that's illegal in Canada. You know, I don't know how it is in the States, but that's it. We just either eat it raw or I steam it and I cook it for the family. And it's a lot more locally like made here. Like you go to restaurants here and you see how they're cooked their food and stuff like that. It's not the same, right? They don't have glyphosate. It's there's no GMO, stuff like that. But back home, it was a lot more me cooking in that sense of what am I making? How am I making it? And just as long as I can try and use in like pasta sauce, I would put in like kelp powder and, you know, as much as I can, whatever's in season into that sauce and just kind of cook it or whatever it is. But for me, it's, I'm not plant-based. A lot of people assume that I'm plant-based, but I'm actually not. I believe in like a 80-20 because I do believe that there's minerals, and nutrients that are in meat that cannot be replaced. But obviously, you know, being like grass fed where it is, local, like very picky on where it is. I would never grab meat from a grocery store. And then everything else being as natural as I can. And if I don't want to eat it raw, then I steam it. I don't typically boil it because it destroys the nutrients out of the food. And fruits and vegetables, I wash it with, you know, vinegar and lettuce and baking soda kind of thing when I was back home. So it's not the same way here. They don't spray it with the same type of stuff, but that's kind of, you get used to that, I guess, doing that. But when it came to plants and stuff, that was easy. Yes. Like my son would be sitting on the front lawn, where it was like in our area, and he would be picking out dandelions and just eat them. You know, get them used to that at a young age.
Yeah. Yep. That's and dandelion. I mean, we have like a lot of junk now, you know, here where things are sprayed with this and this and, you know, but I'm always like, dandelions are like, they're so good for you. Like people, it's so funny that they're this weed that we kill off and they're so pretty. I mean, they're like, they're yellow, they're healthy.
The number one thing is I noticed in the springtime, like you go out in the dandelion, and I remember taking a walk one day and everybody, like every other house was outside taking out the dandelions, like literally spraying it and taking it out. And I'm like, dandelions, the weeds actually neutralize the soil, and our soil is so malnutritioned that it's like screaming for the weeds to take care of me. And so I'm just tempted to be like, you guys, leave them there. Your soil needs it. You need this. You have no idea. So eventually we just put up a sign because we actually had a neighbor who tried to complain saying like, they're not, because we had a corner unit and they're like, oh, they're not cutting their lawn, and bylaw came and it's like, if you don't cut it, like we're going to cut it for you and we're going to bill you. And I was like, so eventually we just put up like a little fence and put up a sign that says, please don't mind the weeds. We're feeding the bees.
That's awesome. Did they lay off after that?
Yeah, they did. They laid off.
Okay. They're like, all right, I'm not even going to try and go here. Well, that's awesome. So Tania, what is your passion for the future? I mean, obviously you're passionate about what you do, but you know, what is your ultimate vision for yourself and your contribution to the world, knowing
now,
what you do?
I mean, I mostly just try to empower people to like learn how to simple living in terms of learn about plant medicine, learn how you can heal yourself naturally and take that power into your own hands. Now what I'm focusing on is I'm recognizing that, yes, like any natural healer, the more you're learning, the more you realize that you don't know, and you constantly want to learn. And the reality is I'm never going to know everything. And, you know, so now what I'm really focusing on and passionate about is wanting to help people, healers, natural healers, build online businesses, because it's in a growing business now more than ever, especially with COVID. I feel like people have taken a step back and recognized that I need to take my health into my own hands versus putting it into the hands of someone else. But there's so many modalities of healing, right? Whether it's like you said, a chiropractor, whether it's a naturopathic doctor, whether it's a herbalist, homeopathic doctor, whether it's an energy healer, whatever it is, there's so many different forms of healing. Some of them all work together. So I want to help those healers be like, perfect. Put yourself online, get to more people, get whatever your knowledge and your expertise is. Let's get it to more people so that they're more equipped to be able to take their power into their own hands, so that eventually it's going to become the norm. Chiropractor care and you know, natural healing and all this is going to become a normal thing, and everyone's going to be talking about it from everywhere. So my passion now, and that I'm going to be running with, is I'm always going to be educating on natural healing and non-toxic living, but now also helping other people, saying, okay, let's build successful businesses online so that your healing modality can be taught to more people, so that we can have more and more people aware of it. Because the reality is I can't do it all myself.
So true. And what I find, cause I train coaches, so I do kind of like what you do just with health coaches, right? So it's like we teach them like the holistic gut health aspect. And then one of the biggest things at our schools, we're teaching them more how to put it into action because nobody had the skill set. Like, I mean, not nobody, but very few. They just weren't taught that. Or they're either educated.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. I'm like, you're not monetizing it, and not even just. It's not about the money. It's about monetizing. When I say that, it's in a sense of like
using
literally make it so that's your full-time job. You're teaching people on a full-time basis how to heal naturally. Don't sit there and work the 9-to-5 job while it's just your side hustle and all this stuff, so that we can get this information out there and faster. And I think because it's such a growing business, I think they're estimated by like 2030 for it to hit like a $27 billion industry. That's how much people are moving away from the conventional system and trying to go back to their roots. So it's like, perfect. Let's leverage this and be able to get that out there for more people.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. Yeah. And that means like, if you are busy as a business, then that means you're helping a lot of people. Exactly. If you are not doing this a lot, then either you're completely philanthropically invested, which is totally fine. But what I like to encourage this, like of coaches and health professionals of any sort, is to like really, really figure out what their main vision is. Because like for me, I'll tell you, and a lot of people are like, a lot of us are empaths, right? We're very empathetic personalities. We've had pain. We've seen people we love in pain. We want to save the world, right? We want to help people save themselves. We want to help them out of the thing they're out of. And what's so cool about that, it makes it such a fulfilling thing to do because you would do it for free. Right. It'd be hard to shut you up, Tania, in any given scenario. If you heard someone struggling with this or that, or like I would say, if you're standing at the grocery store,
if it's unsolicited advice,
exactly. Like there's times where you're biting your tongue because you're like, all right, is this appropriate or not? Right. But that means like it's a passion and you love it, and that's what's beautiful about it, and that's what keeps it so fulfilling for you. And so that's what's really cool about it.
Teaching, like my medicinal herb guide is my main baby. I teach people about here. Learn this. It's like $7. Take it. Learn about plant medicine. And I have got programs that teaches them on how to make medicine. Take that power into your own hands. But like I said, I just want to share how I was able to pretty much leave my job and move countries, essentially just being able to help people. That's all I do. And I never had the vision. Like I left, what a lot of people don't know is I literally left a 6-figure, really good job, traveling the world for free. Me and my family paid for, to barely make anything just to pursue my passion. Because I got to the point where I was like, it's not about the money, it's about the passion. But when you follow the passion and what you're truly serious about, the money comes eventually.
Money will follow.
Exactly. 100%.
Yes. I totally agree with you. And what it comes down to too, is like a lot of people that have the passion, the empathy, don't know how to make a business about it, or they're like, they feel uncomfortable monetizing any level of it.
That's the thing. And it's like, no, you're not, your focus is not money. Your focus is helping people, but how can you help people in a successful way so that, it's a win-win situation?
Yeah. You can take care of your family because guess what? They got to eat too. And what I like to tell everyone too, and this is what I do. I either work for high dollar, right? I get paid well for doing what I do, and I give 200% when I give. Like when I'm there with the coaches, like they feel it, like it's real, and I mean it, and I get paid well for that when I get paid. So I'm either getting paid really well for the time I put in, or I'm investing for free in an area too. So because I have this area that I monetize, and it's a win-win, like I give high value, they should be able to use it and also make good money and do all these things too. It's a win-win. It's not just a win for me. But because I have that, then it also allows me the financial and time freedom to say, okay, now and where am I giving or investing where I'm not? It has nothing to do with monetary gain in areas like philanthropic interests.
Reinvesting the money into making yourself better at what you do. 100%. I could tell you.
Yeah. And areas of give and in people and community, like where you have like, really low income populations and really struggling areas, or my passion is mental health, and people that are, really struggling with stuff like that. And a lot of them, aren't at a place, they're not somewhere where they're going to go pay a coach, money to do all these things. So it allows us to create things and resources sometimes for all of the people, how it suits us. And it's because we create that business of that passion in the first place that we're allowed the flexibility to also invest in the other way and really make that an incredible thing. So that's so cool that you're promoting and teaching that. Like, You're a
That's
woman
just
after my
what I
own
naturally
spirit.
felt inclined to do, because it was like, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, all my programs and herbalism and everything, but let's get more people, it doesn't even have to be a health coach. It's whatever your thing is. Cause you see people in the health and wellness industry everywhere online, and it's like, you love it. You're passionate about it. So let's do something about it. Let's get that knowledge out there. You know what I mean? So,
Turn off that FOMO.
exactly. Right.
Stop watching everybody else do it and comparing
Do
and
it
waiting
yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
and doing this.
Get out there, get
Yeah.
that knowledge out there for sure.
Get moving. Well, that's awesome, Tania. So where can people find you? If they want to find you, whether they're individuals that are interested in all your herbal education or health professionals more
Instagram,
interested in what you do.
Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, it's Tania, Tania the Herbalist. My website also is taniatheherbalist.com. You guys,
And I'll put that in the show
there.
notes too, you guys. So you can see it there too, in case you.
So that's pretty much
or like
everything.
me, we're a
And
terrible
anything that I
speller.
talk about is there. Everything from my medicinal herb guide to my Healer's Awakening free webinar to any products that I use, like EMF protection, all that type of stuff. So really anything and everything that I embody, I essentially, you'll find it there.
Awesome, Tania. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for giving us some insight into your world. Thanks for joining us over in Turkey.
Thanks.
For sharing a little bit of your your investment and your passion, and thank you for contributing not just the podcast, but to the world.
Thanks for having me.
There's way more of us than
course.
absolutely.
Take care.
All righty, my dear. Thanks so much.